Hello, and welcome to a Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness video, where today we're going to be completing the game with the duo of Dustox and Beautifly. And while I really don't have too much to say on Dustox, other than I've heard it's a pretty decent early game Pokemon, Beautifly is one of the Pokemon that I've actually had a shiny of in Pokemon X and the little friend gardens in the post-game. Unfortunately, I never actually used it for battling, so I don't actually know how well Beautifly will actually do. But with that, let's go ahead and get into it. For base stats, Beautifly has 60 HP, 70 attack, 50 defense, 90 special attack, 50 special defense, and 65 speed. And Dustox has 60 HP, 50 attack, 70 defense, 50 special attack, 90 special defense, and 65 speed. They get access to the same Tutor and TM moves, however Dustox does get Light Screen, whereas Beautifly doesn't. And Beautifly gets a lot more grass coverage, and Dustox gets a lot more psychic coverage. And while their moves do offer a decent amount of type variety, I think that there are going to be a lot of places where they struggle, but hopefully they will still end up being pretty decent. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to our Beautifly in particular, which has a hasty nature, raising its speed but lowering its defense, which isn't great, but the extra speed will be helpful, especially seeing as it only had base 65 speed. It gets access to the Swarm ability, raising its bug-type moves whenever it's below a third of its health, which could come in handy, but it really only applies to Silverwind, which is a good move in its own right, but only having one move for it to apply to really isn't that great. And according to Bulbapedia, by level 10, it gets Absorb. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to our Dustox, which has a relaxed nature, raising its defense but lowering its speed, which fittingly is the exact opposite from Beautifly, and I think that's actually more useful for Dustox. It gets the Shield Dust ability, which prevents added effects like being frozen by Ice Beam, which will be very useful throughout the game, and especially during the Greevil fight, and according to Bulbapedia, it gets Confusion by level 10. So with that, let's go ahead and get right into the game. The first thing I do is level up to level 13 to get Gust for both of them, and then I go into the battle against this aspiring Dustox and Beautifly trainer. Hopefully one day he'll be able to make his dreams come true, but unfortunately I am just the better trainer, and I'm able to take him down with ease. So we go into the battle against the old man. He leads with an Abra and a Horsey, and this is the main reason why I had to level up to learn Gust. It's because the Abra is just too threatening with its elemental punches, so I need to be able to take it down quickly. And on top of that, it's the best move to use against Shroomish as well to finish it off. And then all that's left is the Horsey, who is going to take a few gusts to go down. I decide to swap to Absorb, which actually takes it down immediately. So with that, I go ahead and move on to Mount Battle, where I run into another Wurmple. Goodbye, other Wurmple. And then I go into the battle against the Power Rangers. I decide to choose Green because I have a great type matchup into him, so it just makes the most amount of sense. Anyway, time for just a little bit of rambling. If you are enjoying this video so far, consider liking, and if you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. And something I forgot to mention in the 1-year anniversary video is that we're currently right around 75 total challenge runs in this game, which is crazy to think because it's only been a year. And seeing as this is the first video of the new year, I would just like to ask a few questions about overall content, how you feel on it, things you like, things you don't like, and the other big thing is that I really need to figure out how to make a decent looking thumbnail, because they're always an afterthought. So if you have any suggestions for that, please let me know. Anyway, at level 17, Beautifly learns Stun Spore, and Dustox learns Protect. I run into another Wurmple, goodbye other Wurmple, and at level 20, Beautifly learns Morning Sun, and Dustox learns Moonlight. At level 24, Beautifly learns Mega Drain, which I teach over Absorb, and Dustox learns Psybeam, which I teach over Confusion, and then I go into the battle against Laverina. She leads with the Love Disc and a Beautifly. I go for Gust into the Beautifly immediately, which doesn't quite take it down in a single hit, but Dustox picks up the KO. Then out comes Roselia. I go for Gust and Psybeam into it, just in case it survives Gust. It doesn't. So out comes her final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Delcatty. Water Gun hits, really not doing that much damage. Psybeam gets a crit, nearly taking Delcatty down to half health. And then Gust hits, taking it down to yellow. And hopefully Dustox can finish it off. Psybeam hits, and it's very close, but wasn't quite enough. I decided to go for Mega Drain to start dealing damage to Love Disc, and also get a little bit of a heal so that I don't get taken down by Delcatty before the Dustox can move. Then after it goes down, all that's left is the Love Disc, which goes down to one last Mega Drain. Anyway, you can't have a Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness video without the obligatory Mirabee. Hello Mirabee, how are you doing today? Well, it's always good to see ya. Anyway, I run into another trainer who also enjoys to use Beautifly and Dustox, because once I take down this Beautifly here, out comes Dustox, which can survive one hit but can't survive a second and goes down. At the top of the ONBS building, I go ahead and pick up the Ralts for the Twisted Spoon item, that way I can raise my psychic damage by 10%, and then I go to the Rogam Tower to go pick up my two favorite TMs, Hidden Power and Protect, and I teach Hidden Power right away to Dustox, which it happens to get Hidden Power Ice, which is really helpful. Beautifly has Hidden Power Dragon, which could be good, but it's only 34 base power. Anyway, I go into the battle against Snaddle. He leads with a Lantern and a Quagsire, and because I have Mega Drain, I'm able to take down Quagsire in a single hit. Then out comes his next Pokemon, which is a Shadow Lunatone. Now it's going to set up Shadow Sky on the first turn if I'm able to take it down, and from the look of it, I'm definitely not going to be able to. Mega Drain does take it down to half though, and Hidden Power takes it into range to definitely be taken down by the next Mega Drain. And I think we're starting to see the first slipping of Dustox at this point in the game, because everything prior to this, it was still pretty decent. But unfortunately, because it only has 50 in both its attack and special attack, it's really starting to fall behind in damage, so at this point it's really just support to make sure Beautifly can hit those ranges that it needs. So unfortunately, Dustox really is just taking a backseat from here on out for the most part. Anyway, aside from really not doing that much damage, Weather Ball gets a crit, taking me down to 1 HP, Shockwave takes Beautifly down to 4, and the Fruity Pebbles finish us all off. Okay, well anyway, I do a little bit of training up to level 34 and get Silver Wind on both, and I go back into the battle once again, and this time I go for Mega Drain and Silver Wind because I know Mega Drain takes down the Quagsire immediately. I can start dealing damage to the Lunatone. And the thing about Silver Wind is that it has a 1 in 10 chance of raising all of your stats by one stage, which is incredibly powerful. Anyway, Silver Wind finishes off Lunatone. Unfortunately, there was no Omni Boost though. Another Silver Wind into Lantern, taking it down a decent way. Go for Mega Drain to take it down to red, and Silver Wind to finish it off. And then out comes his final Pokemon, which is Metang. And Weather Ball really not doing that much damage without the crit. Silver Wind takes Metang down to about half, and now to about a third. Another Weather Ball, and a Thunder Punch. No paralysis though. Another Silver Wind takes down Metang, and then all that's left is the Cast Form. I go for Psybeam here, but that's definitely weaker than Silver Wind, so I'm not exactly sure why I did it, but I did get Lucky Confusion. So it hits itself in Confusion, and I finish off with just a couple more moves and beat Snaddle. At level 38, Beautifly gets Giga Drain, which I teach over Mega Drain. And I run into another Dustox. Hello, other Dustox. Goodbye, other Dustox. I pick up the TM for Psychic, and I teach that over Gust. And I run into another Beautifly. Hello, other Beautifly. Goodbye, other Beautifly. Anyway, with that, I move into the battle against Godzap. He leads with an Electrode and a Nuzleaf. I go for Psychic and Silver Wind. Fake Out hits Beautifly, and Spark takes it down to half. Silver Wind takes Electrode down to half, though. And so I decide to take down the Electrode with Psychic, and then use Psybeam to hit the incoming Vileplume. So Electrode goes down, then out comes the Vileplume, and Psybeam hits doing, over half. Okay, well that's a bit surprising. I go for Silver Wind into the Nuzleaf to finish it off, and I decide to take down the Vileplume, but not before getting an Omni Boost. So now I'm going to be doing a lot more damage to his final two Pokemon, those being Whiscash and Skarmory. I go for Giga Drain and Hidden Power, which takes down the Whiscash. And Hidden Power, it does a little bit to Skarmory. Aerial Ace hits, not doing too much to Beautifly though, because it's got that defense up. Psychic takes it down pretty low, and Hidden Power finishes it off. So moving on, I run into another Beautifly. Hello, other Beautifly. Goodbye, other Beautifly. And then I go into the battle against Gorgon. He leads with a Lairon and a Celio, and I assumed because I had a flying type he was going to go for Protect and Earthquake like he normally does, but that's not the case. So he actually decides to attack with Lairon, doing a little bit of damage to Dustox. As long as it doesn't start getting defense drops though, I should be fine. Silver Wind finishes off Slowking, and then out comes Ursaring. Another Iron Tail takes me down to half, so I decide to go for Psychic and Moonlight. Psychic, it does over half to Ursaring, but it retaliates with a slash into Dustox, and Lairon hits another Iron Tail. Go for Psychic to finish off the Ursaring, then out comes his first Shadow Pokemon, which is a Shadow Primeape. And because of how threatening it can be, I decide to use Psybeam into it, and I actually get a crit and take it down in a single hit. Then all that's left is his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Hypno, and because I have Silver Wind, I should be able to take this down pretty easily. And once it goes down, all that's left is the Lairon, who uses an Iron Tail, taking Dustox down pretty low, so I decide to go for Giga Drain and Moonlight, just to guarantee that Dustox isn't going to be taken down. And that safety was well warranted, because it gets a crit Iron Tail, taking me down to the same amount of health I had before, and Lairon goes down to another Giga Drain. Anyway, going into the final area of the game, and it's definitely not a top tier time, but I could see them still placing fairly decently if they can get through the last area of the game efficiently. Anyway, we go into a rematch against Lavrina. She leads with a Gardevoir and a Gorbis this time. I go for Silver Wind, which actually takes down a Gardevoir in a single hit. Then out comes Roselia, which gets taken down very low by the other Silver Wind. Unfortunately, Beautifly does get attracted, so I need to swap targets to start taking down Gorbis, and luckily I'm able to attack through it. Then out comes Farfetch'd, which takes a Psybeam, not really doing that much damage. Leechead gets set up on Dustox, and then I go for Hidden Power and Psychic into Farfetch'd to finish it off. And then out comes her final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Altaria. Roselia sets up the second Leech Seed, so now it's going to be healing quite a lot every turn. So I decide to go for Psychic to finish it off, and then go for the 4 times effective Ice Beam, which takes down Altaria with a crit. And then further into the volcano, I run into another team with a Dustox and a Beautifly. So goodbye Dustox, and goodbye Beautifly. At the top of the mountain, I run into Snaddle once again, who leads with a Matang and Quagsire. I go for Giga Drain to take down the Quagsire immediately, and then out comes Sizzler, which, even though Psybeam doesn't really do much damage, it does have a chance to confuse, so it is worthwhile going for. So I go for Psychic into it, hoping for a special defense drop like I just got, and with that I should be able to take it down with just another Psychic. So I do just that, and I go for Silver Wind, and that's because the next Pokemon coming out is Solrock, and if it's able to set up Shadow Sky, it can be really annoying. Silver Wind takes it down pretty low, but not quite a one-shot, and so I go for Silver Wind into it to finish it off, and then a second Silver Wind to hit the next Pokemon coming out, which is Cast Form. And Silver Wind hits, not doing as much. Matang hits another Ice Punch, and I'm getting really lucky on not being frozen. Silver Wind doesn't quite take down Cast Form, and the second one does, and then out comes his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Starmie. And Shadow Starmie is always very dangerous because it's very fast and hits very hard. And Silver Wind didn't take it down in a single hit, so Dustox goes down. But all that's left is the Matang and the Starmie, and because I outspeed, I know I can take it down right away. I go for Morning Sun to heal up. Another Ice Punch. And then I go for Silver Wind, which is going to be about a 3-shot. And I jinxed it because I get frozen. Luckily, I thaw out immediately, use Morning Sun to heal up, and then go for another Silver Wind to take it down to red. And one last hit should take it down. So that was a pretty easy Snaddle fight. Oh, and an Omni Boost to boot. Anyway, going into the battle against Ardos, he leads with a Shadow Swallow and Alakazam. And I decide I want to get rid of the Alakazam immediately because it's got all of the elemental punches, which can do a ton of damage to Beautifly. I go for Silver Wind, which only does a little bit of damage to Kingdra, but hopefully with another couple Silver Winds it will get taken down, which that takes it down to yellow. Unfortunately, Swallow does use Shadow Half, but we are able to take down the Kingdra, and then out comes this next Pokemon, which is a Heracross, which wouldn't be threatening if it weren't for the fact that it has Rock Tomb, which is 4 times effective against Beautifly. So I do need to take it down right away. And I go for Morning Sun, which only heals up a quarter instead of half, and that's because it's based on the weather. Anyway, Heracross goes down to a single Psybeam, then out comes Shadow Electabuzz. I go for Psychic and Silver Wind into it, which Psychic takes it down to half. Swallow hits a Shadow Break, finishing off Dustox, and Shadow Break nearly takes down Beautifly, and the Fruity Pebbles finish it off. Okay, well, after a few more defeats, I decide to teach Substitute, and that's so I can 1v1 the Snorlax a little better. And I go back into the battle again. This is now attempt number 5, and Swallow decides to go for Shadow Half right off the bat, which is definitely better for me because then I can heal up better with Morning Sun. So I get up to full health, go for Silver Wind to finish off Kingdra, and then out comes the Heracross once again, and I go for Psychic into it, and then Silver Wind into the following Pokemon, the Shadow Electabuzz, and hopefully I can get an Omni Boost. Swallow sets up Shadow Sky, so healing's not going to be nearly as good, and Fruity Pebbles are now raining down. Go for another Psychic and Silver Wind into it to finish it off, but it goes down to a single Psychic. Then out comes his final Pokemon, which is Snorlax, which luckily gets Shadow halved by the Swallow, so I'm able to take it down to yellow. And I know that these two are strong enough to take it down with just a couple Silver Winds. And with that, all that's left is the Swallow, which I know I outspeed, and I can take down with a single Psychic. So with that, Swallow goes down, and we beat Ardos on the 5th attempt. Not too bad. I go into the battle against Gorgon, and I go for Silver Wind to try to take down the Slowking immediately. Unfortunately, it does survive on just a sliver of health. And then I go for Side Beam into the Ursaring, which doesn't really do that much damage. Silver Wind to finish off Slowking. And then out comes Aggron, but unfortunately because Beautifly's down, I can really only hope that I can make it through this. Iron Tail hits, doing not that much damage. Silver Wind takes down the Ursaring. And then out comes Walrein. I go for another Silver Wind into it, but unfortunately because the PP is so low on that move, I am starting to run out. Earthquake hits, not really doing that much damage. Psy Wave takes it down to yellow, another Ice Beam, and Iron Tail. Luckily I don't have to worry about being frozen. Moonlight to heal up, and Earthquake hits, really doing no damage. Go for Psy Beam, which finishes off the Walrein, and then out comes his first Shadow Pokemon, which is Shadow Poliwrath. Aggron hits another Iron Tail, taking me down to half, so I need to Moonlight this turn in order to get up to full. Poliwrath sets up Shadow Sky, so now Moonlight's not going to be nearly as effective. Psybeam doesn't quite finish it off. It's not really doing that much damage to me though. Fruity Pebbles rain down, go for another Psybeam to take it down, and then out comes his final Pokemon, which is Mr. Mime. Aggron hits another Iron Tail, taking me down to half once again. I go for Silver Wind, which actually takes down the Mr. Mime in a single hit. So now all I have to do is take down Aggron, which shouldn't be too hard, but might take a while. I go for Moonlight to heal up to half. Shadow Sky ends, so I go for Moonlight once again to get to nearly full. Go for a Psybeam, which takes Aggron down to half. Another Iron Tail hits. Another Psybeam, taking it down to red. And one last Psybeam will finish it off. So that was a bit unexpected, but we actually made it through with just Dustox. Anyway, going into the battle against Eldest, he leads with a Manectric and a Ninjask. I go for Silver Wind into the Manectric, taking it down to half, and a second one, taking it down to a sliver. It sets up Shadow Sky, so now everything's going to be taking bad chip damage. I go for Silver Wind to finish off the Manectric, and I go for Hidden Power Ice to start dealing damage to the next Pokemon, which is a Shadow Salamence. And this Pokemon is always a bit of a threat, and Hidden Power Ice didn't even take it down, despite it being 4 times effective. So I need to finish it off with Psychic, and go for another Hidden Power to hit the next Pokemon coming out, but unfortunately Psychic doesn't quite do the job either. So Hidden Power does finish it off. Then out comes Flygon, which might not go down to a Hidden Power Ice, but at this point I really need to get rid of Ninjask because it is doing quite a bit of damage with Aerial Ace. And unfortunately it takes Beautifly down to 9 HP. Psychic does take it down though. And then out comes his Shadow Marowak, which is holding the Thick Club item, which doubles its attack stat, meaning that it can do a ton of damage if left unchecked. And Fruity Pebbles come down, taking down Beautifly, Hidden Power Ice to finish off the Marowak, and then out comes his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Lapras. Flygon hits a Flamethrower, doing a little bit of damage. And luckily the Shadow Sky ended, so Lapras is going to be using Shadow Sky this turn. unless it decides not to and just finishes me off. Okay, well that's a little bit unfortunate. So now on attempt number 5, and that's because I really needed all the luck to line up, and I needed to be able to take down my Nectric in a single turn. Then out comes the Salamence once again. Pretty Pebbles rain down. And I go for Hidden Power Ice and Psychic into Salamence, which Psychic doesn't really do too much damage, but hopefully Hidden Power is strong enough to nearly take it down. Okay. Well, luckily I'll be able to use another Silver Wind and another Hidden Power Ice to hit the next Pokemon coming out, which Flygon goes down to a single Hidden Power, and then out comes Marowak once again, and it should be able to be taken down by both Psychic and Hidden Power, so it's not too big a threat, and luckily I do outspeed, so I know I can take it down with ease. Special Defense guarantees my victory, and then out comes Lapras once again. Shadowy Aura is still falling though, so it's a little unfortunate. I go for Giga Drain and Moonlight. Giga Drain does nearly half to Lapras, and Moonlight heals me up to 70. Shadow Storm comes out doing quite a bit of damage, and I decide to double into the Lapras because I think I can take it down this turn. So Aerial Ace takes Beautifly down to 31, but I'm able to heal up to 76 and finish off the Lapras with Psybeam. Then all that's left is the Ninjask, which should go down to a single Psychic, but not before taking down Dustox, and I beat Eldest. Moving on to the big box legendary, Shadowlugia, and this might take a minute. I go for Silver Wind, and yeah, that's kind of what I expected. So let me go ahead and speed things up a little bit because this is going to take a minute. But eventually I'm able to take it down, and then we can move on to the final boss of the game, which is Gravel. He leads with a Shadow Rhydon and Moltres, and unfortunately during that fight I lost Beautifly and I go down to a single crit. Okay, let me go into the battle normally. This time go for Psychic, which really isn't doing that much to Moltres, but Psybeam does take it below half. Shadow Wind hits, taking Beautifly down in a single hit. Okay, well that's not great. And Shadow Fires are starting to add up. So eventually I go down to a crit, and I need to change something, and I decide that teaching Light Screen over Hidden Power is definitely the way to move forward, because if I can just reduce the amount of damage I'm taking, I should be able to survive a little longer. Anyway, this is attempt number 10, and that's because I really just need the luck to go my way. A lot of the time I need Rhydon misses in order to make any attempt worthwhile. Anyway, Giga Drain does take down Rhydon in a single hit though, and then out comes Exeggutor, which I can take down with a single Silver Wind. And luckily, this is what changed this battle from a loss to a victory, was the fact that I got the Omni Boost. And now I need to take down the Tauros, otherwise I won't be able to heal with Morning Sun or Moonlight. So I get it taken down, and then out comes the Articuno, which is a huge threat because it always has that chance to freeze Beautifly. I go for Psybeam and Morning Sun in order to take down Moltres, which it just misses the range. And Morning Sun takes Beautifly nearly to full health before dropping immediately back down to where it was. Another Morning Sun and Psybeam finish off Moltres though. And then out comes his final Pokemon, which is Zapdos. Morning Sun takes me up to about 3/4 of my health, and I'm taken back down to about half. I go for Psychic and Light Screen because my Light Screen just ended. And Psychic's actually taking Zapdos down to half health, but unfortunately Shadow Chill does take down Beautifly, and now I'm locked in a battle 1 against 2, but luckily they decide to waste the one opportunity they've given to try to set up Shadow Sky, and Zapdos goes down, and all that's left is the Articuno, which I was in this position before in the previous fight, but unfortunately without the Omni Boost, you just take too much damage from Shadow Chill, and you don't deal enough damage, so eventually one of you will get a crit, which unfortunately last time was Articuno. But this time, after quite a few minutes of back and forth battling, I'm able to take down Articuno and beat the game. So how well did Beautifly and Dustox do? Well, they beat the game at a time of 13 hours, 40 minutes, and 24 seconds, at level 71 for Beautifly and 68 for Dustox, and they lost 24 times overall, which is honestly pretty decent considering that they are two early game bugs, which are meant to fall off very quickly in the mid game and be almost unusable in the late game, but they actually end up being okay in this game. It's not a great placement, but they do find themselves in the C tier alongside fellow bug Butterfree. Now, even though I think that these Pokemon are okay, they have a lot of issues that definitely stop them from being good. For one, their move pools, even though they're okay with the amount of type variety they get, they don't really have anything to deal with the bigger threats of the game, other than Silverwind for Executor and Psychic to do modest damage to most things. And then, of course, their stats aren't great either. Beautifly is built very much to be an offensive Pokemon. Unfortunately, with that 65 base speed, it is going to be outsped, especially in the late game, and its offenses aren't even all that powerful. And Dustox is built to be very defensive, which it is decently defensive, but the problem is that without getting boosts from Silverwind, it really doesn't do any damage, so it can find itself fighting an uphill battle without Beautifly sometimes, and wasting a lot of time by just being so slow. Anyway, with that being said, if you did enjoy this video, consider liking and subscribing. If you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. Thank you so much for watching, and bye!